Okay, well, let's kick this off, and hopefully, maybe a few other people will join us as we go along. But uh, nice to see everybody here today. Uh, and as advertised, we're going to talk about some strategies and possible techniques and whatever to break down those brick walls. Obviously, we all have brick walls, whether it's in our parks line or some other family line. So whatever we're going to talk about today is certainly applicable to any brick wall ancestor that you have. Uh, if you're one of those who are lucky enough to have your lineage all the way back to Robert Parke and beyond, or the Roger line that goes back, you know, again, you're bound to have another line that has a brick wall somewhere. So this is something that I think we can all benefit from. And I put myself at the top of that list. Uh, I've got brick walls in my own family, and some of the things we're talking about here today, I'm as guilty as anyone of not following through and doing a thorough, complete search and sort of exhausting possible avenue. Uh, and along those lines, we've talked about the Legacy Tree family webinars before. I'll just mention those again because if you're not familiar with them, they are a subscription site. They do have some free webinars, uh, but they have webinars on absolutely every aspect of genealogy research you can imagine. And it costs 49 bucks a year, I think, for a subscription, and it's worth every penny. So you might check that out. Actually, one of the webinars that I'll put on our resource list and post that later with the recording is actually a free webinar, but most of them are through the subscription. But I would certainly recommend them, and they've got a number of things involving brick walls on there with good information. One of them, the woman actually uses a term that I found very apropos. She calls them artificial brick walls. And in a sense, many of the brick walls we all have, I think, are artificial brick walls. Meaning, and her meaning, I think, is that we really haven't done everything we can do to break through those. If we could say we truly had made an exhaustive search, then I think you've got a real brick wall. But in most cases, and I put myself in that same category, I know I haven't done absolutely everything I can to break that through some of those brick walls. And so today we're going to talk about some of that. We're going to talk about some resources and strategies that perhaps you haven't tried before. And hopefully those will re-energize your search efforts and lead to some progress. This is not going to be a presentation about DNA. We talked about that a number of occasions. You can go back and look at some of the older town hall recordings that we've done on the subject, and we'll certainly revisit it at some point in the future. But I will give it just a little mention here at the top, because DNA research is obviously one of the effective tools to help you break through a brick wall. There are two types, as I'm sure you're familiar with. There's Y-DNA and there's autosomal DNA. There's a third type, mitochondrial, which I don't put as much emphasis on because it's I think much harder to work with and break through with. People do, but for the most part, Y-DNA and autosomal are the two that we use extensively. And I just want to sort of make some points about Y-DNA. Yes, only males can take a Y-DNA test, and say in my example with a Parks, it's going to trace my direct male Parks ancestry. But anybody can use DNA in their search efforts. All you have to do is find the right candidate to serve as a test participant. If you're female, or if you're searching a line that is not your surname, you can still utilize Y-DNA. In the last week or so, I ordered two Y-DNA tests for two Hale cousins. a third cousin, and an eighth cousin. And oddly enough, though, it's to help solve a problem with my Parks line. A few months ago, I had a Hale cousin, an eighth cousin, turn up who matched our Parks Y-DNA. Now, our Hale lines split off in the early 1700s and went to different parts of the country. They're out in Arkansas. So, how did my Parks DNA, get into this line that came from England in the 1600s and was around Lancaster, Virginia on the Chesapeake Bay, and then up around Baltimore? And then obviously some came south, some headed on west. So our efforts now are to see if we can nick generations where that Parks DNA came in. And that's why I've enlisted a third cousin. We share a great grandfather, to see if his DNA matches Hale or Parks. I suspect it will match Hale, and there are others in the Hale project who have Hale DNA, basically. And I suspect this other eighth cousin, who's a first cousin of the Hale who has the Parks DNA, may also have Parks DNA because they share a grandfather. And it looks like the Parks DNA entered their line quite a ways back, just looking at genetic distances and things. So that's a way we're using Y-DNA. And in a case where I had to go find people of a different surname to help solve a problem. So I just wanted to use that as an illustration that anybody can use Y-DNA. Don't feel left because you're not a Park male in this case. The other type of DNA, which I think we're all pretty familiar with, is autosomal DNA, such as Ancestry or 23andMe or My or Family Finder at Family Tree DNA. That's the DNA we get from each of our parents, half from our mother, half from our father, approximately a quarter from each of our four grandparents, approximately an eighth from our 8 great-grandparents, and so on. The basic thing to remember is anybody can do an autosomal DNA test, but the more the merrier, especially in this case, because the principle is if you can get oldest generation in your family to test, they're going to have more of the DNA that you're trying to find than you do. I'm fortunate in that I had my father test, and his brother and his sister, 2 of his first cousins, and a couple of his second cousins who are all Parks. So they've got more Parks DNA than I inherited. So my dad or my uncle or my aunt may match somebody and I don't. Or particularly my dad may match somebody and I don't because I didn't inherit that specific segment of Parks DNA from him. So the earlier generation you can test, the better. In lieu of that, and also along with those lines, my mother passed away in 1971, long before DNA testing was around. But because I had my dad tested, now when I get a match, I can automatically tell which side of the family that match is on. Because if they don't match my father, I know they have to match me through my mother's side of the family. So that's another advantage of having that older generation. It helps you sort out your matches. In lieu of that, if you're not able to have had either parent, again, having aunts and uncles on both sides of the family, or first cousins, and more than one first cousin on both sides of the family will help because obviously they're sharing less common DNA with you, but again, different mixes. But if you can get a match and they happen to match a cousin on your father's side, then that helps you focus your research and looking for matches. So that's about as much as we'll talk about DNA today, but don't neglect that. If you haven't really tested yourself and tested relatives, then you're really missing out on a big tool that can open doors in any of your brick walls. So moving on from DNA, where are we? So, a lot of us use a lot of the traditional resources for research. You start with the census or uh, other kinds of information like that, birth, death records, all. But there are some places to go to find things that you may not have thought about, or to find resources that you're not aware of, and are not necessarily always that easy to find out about. And the first thing, the first one we're going to talk about, and I'm going to share screen here for a second, which I'm not very good at. Obviously, because here we go. One of these days I'll figure this share screen thing out. Success. Aha. Can everybody see that?
I can.
Okay, good. So we're going to talk about the Family Search Research Wiki today. Now, many of you may be familiar with it. I hope you are. But if you're not, this is a great way to get a feeling for an area or a place where you think an ancestor might have been. And let's see, all you have to do, of course, with Family Search, it's a free site. They do ask you to create an account, doesn't cost anything, and then you sign in. Here on the home page, you simply go and a drop-down menu, and you go down to Research Wiki. And I'm going to put a link on our resource page along with the video to a free webinar that talks about the Research Wiki, and he does a good 25, 26 minutes explaining it, probably far, far better than I will here today. But this is basically what you're going to see, and you can search all over the world. It's an amazing resource, and you can narrow it down by locality. In this case, let's, since we're going to use Fayette County, Pennsylvania, later when we're talking maybe a little bit about Sarah's issues, let's go there. And it will take us to a page about Fayette County, Pennsylvania. And it will give you see over here on the table of contents, information, a description of the county courthouse, location, phone numbers, fax numbers, talks about record loss, boundary changes, history timeline, and then you get into resources, and such as Bible records, biographies, business, commerce, and occupation, cemeteries, census records, and so forth. And it just goes down: land and property records, local histories, maps, migration, military records, just about every subject you can think of. And over here in the middle of the page, or the meat of the page, you'll see that those things are listed, and a lot of them are linked. And if you wanted to go to a certain borough within Fayette County, those are probably all hot linked to other pages. Going on down a little bit, and this will take you to various sites around the internet, not just Family Search. They have their things on here, but if something's on Ancestry or MyHeritage or something, they will indicate it's can be found there and that it's a paid site. So you have the option, if you belong, to go there, but if you don't, you can focus on other things that you can access without a subscription. But basically what these pages tell you is it gives you just about any information you want to know about that county and what kind of records are available and how to access them, what time period they cover, all of that sort of thing. And so it's just as great a resource as I can think, and I use it constantly in every part of the country and in Canada. In now that we're starting to do more research in the British Isles, it covers areas there as well. So you can literally go any place in the world and find out information about that area and familiarize yourself with what's available. And that can save you so much time, and it could certainly lead you to sources that you were not. So I would recommend always using this research wiki as one of your first go-to steps when you're trying to work on a genealogy problem or find out more about ancestors who may have lived in a certain location. The second, let me just put this down and I'll stop sharing for a moment. The other, another source that I wanted to talk about basically is simply a search engine source, a search, such as Google, but others, I know Sarah has mentioned that she actually prefers DuckDuckGo, and there are certainly other search engines out there, and it's not a bad idea to use different search engines for the same searches because you will get different results, different rankings because of their algorithms. So you might stumble on something on one that doesn't seem to appear on the other. But of course, you know, I rely on Google. And here is a book, and I'll put the name on the resource page. It's called Google Your Family Tree, Unlock the Hidden Power of Google by Daniel M. Lynch. I'll put all that information on there so you don't need to copy it down. It was published in 2008, and I looked online. It has not had an updated edition. Sometimes, a lot of times, books that deal with online genealogy and online sources can become dated in a very short amount of time. And so this is, you know, ancient in some ways for something that concerns the internet. But basically what they talk about in here is still current. I think if there was a real need to update that, they would have certainly done so. And it's a very complete book. It's very thick, different chapters, but the very first chapter, which I think is very valuable, and you can find some information online as well, but it talks about search engine basics, and that's, you know, knowing how to craft a Google search for genealogy purposes, and just the basic uses of things like quotation marks, pluses and minuses. You know, with a name like Park or Parks, I know we've all experienced how frustrating that can be because it's a very common word. And you'll get things about national parks or state parks or theme parks. But there are ways to at least partially filter some of those out using a minus. So you can say parks minus national minus, and hopefully they're not 100% effective, but it can whittle those down. But it can be very frustrating with that surname, and of course other people are in the same boat. And if you can imagine having a name like Baker or White or Brown or something like that, they have the same problem. But there are ways to work around it, and certainly an effective search, and they talk about this a little bit more in when we're talking about full text search, is to sort of a cheat sheet for yourself when you're making a search. If your ancestor's name is Robert Parks, for instance, you want to search for Robert Parks, sometimes Parks Robert, because a lot of, you know, records may have surname first and then given name. You want to use abbreviations. ROBT period Parks, and again switch the name, the surname, and the given name, uh, that sort of thing, and then things that you might not get otherwise if you didn't try some of those variations. And of course, with if we're looking for early records, back when spelling was much more good than it is now, you obviously want to try all of the different variations of the surname as well. Also, if it was an Elizabeth, you could even try Betsy, if she was known to go by that nickname, something like that. And there are other terms that you can add on to narrow that, but it's amazing how much can come up of value in a Google search that you wouldn't find just simply sticking to ancestry or even family search or that sort of thing. Just recently, I was doing some research and did a Google search, and one of the hits was I think it was something like a Bennington Family Association website, some other surname, but it came up with hits for in Brunswick County, Virginia, that I'm looking at, because he was mentioning some land transactions with a Bennington, if that was the surname. And that led me to looking for the original record in other sources. So you never know what is out there until you sort of go looking for it. So don't ignore a simple Google search engine search. That book, by the way, I found is still available on Amazon. It's listed about $13.62 for a new paperback, but there are also used copies that are in very good shape for as little as $2.62, $7. So it would be worth it to look. If you're interested in getting a copy of that, go on Amazon and look for a used copy. Sometimes the shipping is more expensive than the book itself. So the third thing, which is somewhat related because it's another type of search engine, is the full text search on familysearch.org. I think we talked about that a little bit at a previous meeting a time ago, but this has only been around for about a year. It's using AI, and it's Family Search's attempt to incorporate AI into their search engines of all of their collections. And at the beginning, it's still technically an experiment. It's still in beta, and they warn you on the website that it may not work all the time because they may be taking it down to make some changes, or it's not complete, but it's apparently been expanding. It was announced first at RootsTech in 2024 and updated in the last RootsTech at 2025. They talked about how many more record collections have been added, and that's ongoing. I think at this point, there's something like 1.6 billion records now have full text search capability for 4,500 different collections, and they're expanding it all over the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, many other countries. They're even adding some records in Spanish, and it's incredible the amount of capability that they're bringing on all the time. One of the good things about this is a search can bring up original documents, images, in some of their collections, and they also will include on the side a transcription. Now, when they started out almost a year ago, some of those transcriptions were pretty flawed, but they have been working on their OCR. If it's a typed a book or something like that, and that's improving. And they also have what's called HTR, handwritten text recognition. So they can do transcriptions of those old deeds and wills and those kinds of documents that are in old handwriting. And it's getting better and better because that's the way AI works, is it learns from its mistakes. And the more it does, the better it gets. So that's improving. Not only a transcription, but we'll take a look in a minute. You can also ask it to summarize the document, and it will give you a sort of a summary of the important, what it's about, some of the important names in the document, and if there are relationships or something given, or that sort of thing. It's just, it's amazing. And of course, then, as always, when you find something on Family Search, you have the ability to download it, and download simply the image, or download the image with the source citation on it, which is very handy. If you're inclined to put a tree on Family Search, which I don't, but you can attach the document to a family and then a family tree online. Lots and lots of capabilities. So let me go back to the screen sharing again, and we'll just take a look at it one more time here. So, well, we'll scroll up. This again is if you go to, well, I'm not on the home page, but if you scroll all the way down on the home page and on the right, I guess I can back up here, just so you know how to find it. Although I think you can do a Google search that would take you right there. It's going to take a little second to load, but we'll get back to the home page at Family Search, just so you know how to find it, how to get there, because they don't necessarily make it that easy. But then simply scroll all the way down to the bottom of the home page, and you'll see Family Search Labs over here on the right. And try out some potential new features and tell us what you think. View experiments. So you hit view experiments, and they have a number of things that they are working on in beta testing and developing. And one of those, you'll see in a minute, down here on the right, is expand your search with full text. So I've already tried it, so mine already appears there. You can turn it off if you want. I don't know why you'd bother, but so if you've already turned it on, you simply go to experiment. And you will see there'll be a search box that comes up. Now, the free webinar that I will put a link to on the resource page, he talks about the search technique and the search box in great detail. So I'm not going to go into that detail now. Plus, he knows it far better than I do. But basically, keywords, name, you can specify a place, a year range. If you happen to know an image group number for one of their collections, you can put that in, supposedly. But in this case, let me put Parke, which is one of Sarah's ancestors, and Fayette County, Pennsylvania, county 1783 to present. So we want that. And we'll probably limit it from 1783 to about 1850, just to narrow down any potential hits. And when you do that, then it will turn up, hopefully, a number of hits that you can then scroll through, look at. For instance, the very first one is Pennsylvania Patent Records, 1794 to 61. It will give you a short preview here what that is. If you want to look at the more, it will give you a little bit more explanation, just so you can, before you click through, see whether it's something that you think is worthwhile checking out. So this will show you all of the places where Andrew Parke is mentioned in this document. The other term is Pennsylvania, and the other is Fayette. So this looks like okay. This is in South Fayette Township, but Allegheny County. So that's a little bit north of Fayette County, Pennsylvania. Here are Sheriff's Deed Book, Fayette, Pennsylvania, 1887 to 1875. Andrew Parke is mentioned. Fayette, Pennsylvania deeds, 1807 to 1817, 1807 to 1817. Andrew Parke mentioned, and it will show you how many matches are in that document. It's any of these terms that show up. So they're not all Andrew Parke. A lot of them are Pennsylvania. A lot of them are United States or Fayette. But it gives you an idea of what's in there. And then, of course, you can click on the image itself. Now, I think I may already have this one up on another page. And when you do, then again, over here, you're going to see I've done a summarization of the document. I chose that. The text outlines various transactions in the early 1800s. The dates given are 1807, 5, 7. Some of the names and relationships. It doesn't mention Andrew Parke in the summarization, but out that normally, and I don't know why I did away with that somehow, but there would be a transcription over here on the side. But then you can go into the actual image and you will see the search terms highlighted in yellow. So, you know, you sort of look to see where Andrew Parke is mentioned here, and you can enlarge it. A little bit bigger for those of us who, and here actually you can see here he's listed as Andrew Parks, and for some reason the search engine did not highlight that. But then over here, somehow I managed to mute myself. Over here where he is highlighted, you can see he. So that's the kind of thing that this full text can bring up. It can bring up land records now. It can bring up wills, all sorts of things. Very, very valuable. I've been this week on a Parks research project of mine, and it's been very helpful and leading to breakthroughs. So if you haven't used this yet, I would urge you to familiarize yourself with it, and that webinar that I will put the link to will help explain how to negotiate and navigate this probably better than I will, but you'll get the hang of it. And again, he talks about using some of those same techniques of entering search terms to get the best results, reversing surname and given name, using abbreviations for names, using different spellings of a surname, because that can affect, you know, how what kind of results you're going to get. So get away from this. And I think the other thing that we've talked about, or maybe haven't, is doing this sort of thing. It's good to keep a research log, because then we don't end up forgetting whether we've looked someplace. And it's a very systematic way of knowing where you've been, where you've looked, and what the results were. Did you find anything? Did you not? And that way you can better track what you've looked at and what's left to be looked at. So basically, this isn't exhaustive, but I just wanted to give you some ideas of how to go about, making some progress, breaking through, and possibly finding some records that you either didn't know existed or didn't know how to access. And along with DNA, which is a great tool, and part of the breakthroughs that DNA results can give us are pointing us to a specific location, depending on information you get from matches and what their family tree will tell you. Then you know where to look. And then you can go over to something like your research wiki, find that area, see what kind of records are available, access them that way, or go to the family research full text search and plug in your search terms there and see what you find. And it does work. It does work. I've been having good luck with it just in the last 2-3 weeks. So I'm here as a true believer. So that's it. If you got questions or comments, and some of you got in touch during the week about wanting to discuss some of your specific brick wall problems, and we can quickly go through some of those, and I'll sort of address where I think we are on those. And I think what's probably going to be best for those of you who got in touch, like Kim and Sarah and Ken, and I'm not sure who else was on the list that's here today, but I think at some point it might be better to set up a one-on-one meeting, and like, for instance, Sarah, if we can do that and get Susan Avery involved, the lineage leader for lineage TK, or Tad or somebody, because the more people who have some knowledge or grasp of things involved, the better. But we can then really get into detail about, what you've looked at, what is left to look at, what you might try, that sort of thing. For instance, Sarah, I was doing a little bit of looking on yours. Your lineage key, technically, even though it matches lineage key K, you're a descendant of Roger of New Jersey. But it goes back to, in our given name index, to Andrew, who was born, it says about 1700 in Pennsylvania, ? Now you, in your correspondence, said you had a David who you thought was his father. I'm not sure where that came from.
That came from a list from my great-grandfather's journals, which I have, and he names his father's grandparents.
Ah.
And a list of all the siblings there.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say if it's maternal or paternal, but I'm thinking it's paternal because there is a list of Parke siblings that matches
Okay.
that.
So yeah, basically, I saw that Andrew is there in the 1820 Fayette County, Pennsylvania census. His age range would put him born sometime between 1776 and 1794. Because when I saw that his son Albert Gallatin was born in 1814, I knew his father had to be born a little bit more earlier than 1800. So he was probably born in the 1790s, certainly, and that fits with the 1820 census. There is a David Parks in Fayette County in 1800 and in 1810. who is born sometime before 1755. So that makes sense that he is of an age to be the father of Andrew. And again, I think if you haven't already used that full text search to really do a deep dive in Fayette County and see what's there uh, in terms of land, patents, and any other sort of records that might turn up, it could be uh, helpful. There is another matching line in your DNA project that goes back to a James A. Parke, who was born about 1817 in Pennsylvania. That's as early as they know. There's no lineage key assigned to it. It's not a Park Society member, but he had a grandson named Albert Gallatin Parke, who was born in 1875 in Putnam County, West Virginia. Uh, so the similar names in the family usually suggest a possible connection. In this case, it's a little tricky because Albert Gallatin, uh, there were a number of people in Pennsylvania who were named Albert Gallatin something because he was one of our founding fathers. He's called the Swiss founding father. He was born in Geneva, Switzerland. He was both a House of Representatives and a senator from Pennsylvania for a number of time. He was the longest serving Secretary of the Treasury. He was ambassador to both France and Britain at one point. Very distinguished guy. Uh, but he was 1761, died in 1849. So he would have been a very well admired figure in Pennsylvania. And I didn't look to see if in the House, if his district would have included Fayette, but it's quite possible. So while these two lines, which genetically connect, share that name, it's hard to tell whether it's because it was within the family or it's simply a coincidence because a lot of people were named after Albert Gallatin. But that matching test is only a Y37. So I think one of the things that we would want to do is to try to approach them, whoever that is, has control of the account and have them upgrade their test to a big Y. And certainly, if your cousin is willing to do that as well, I think that could be helpful because these two lines are bound to be fairly closely allied, I think.
Can I have a question? Does my cousin have to submit a new sample to do that, or can the sample he's
No,
submitted be?
chances are the sample that's in storage is good. We can check to see uh, if it hasn't been upgraded too many times, or if they haven't added a family finder or a mitochondrial. It's how many times they've had to go back to that original sample.
We
Uh,
added a family finder. We've done the 111 and we've added a family finder. And I'm the manager of the account. He knows nothing about. He just gave the
yeah, yeah.
speak.
Well, we can check and see, but it sounds like there certainly should be enough left. And if there's not, and if your cousin's still willing to do that again, if there weren't enough sample, yeah, they would send out a new test kit at no charge. But I think, and Gary can speak to that too. I think it's probably a good chance that there's enough DNA there to upgrade. Yeah. So, and knowing that those two lines are from similar places at similar times, and they are both Roger descendants, I think there's a good chance that they're if they do a big Y, which without going into the details of the SNP testing, but it's a sort of a trail of breadcrumbs going back in time. They are bound to be have a common, most recent common ancestor, fairly recent enough back then that would point you towards, you know, when and where that ancestry happened. And,
Susan Avery and I were just exchanging emails about that.
yeah,
And we weren't certain of what the costs would be for an upgrade rather than a brand new.
well, a brand new big Y right off the bat is about 450 roughly, and when they run a sale, it's about 50, I think $50 off, about $399 or something. An upgrade from 111, I believe, is something, Gary, help me out, maybe around $150, somewhere in that range. Uh,
It might be a little more,
yeah,
200. You're in the ballpark. Yeah.
yeah, I may be wrong.
That's
But again,
doable.
yeah, uh, but I think it would be well worth it. And the other thing too, of course, is that genetic group. What is it? Group. I got to hear something. Group 38 of Roger descendants and a lot of fragment lines could well benefit from having a large number of big Y tests, because the more we have, the better chance we have of sorting out different branches of that huge, family tree, and could help a lot of people figure out where they might connect to known Roger descendants. So that's a project for not just for that group. Our whole project needs that kind of shot in the arm. So let's get in touch later about coordinating with Susan and really get into the as as I have a cousin who says, get into the bug dust on this. So, uh,
I,
Kim,
if I can
sure.
comment, I had actually created I don't know if you know my history, but my people, the KY line comes from New Jersey, which is where the Roger part comes from. So early on, I was trying to separate the two, and I literally have thousands and thousands of documents in the closet behind me for both the Roger Park line and the Alexander Park line. I've done extensive research and get myself in trouble sometimes. But
Well, it sounds like we should have you in on that meeting as well.
well, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe.
because if you've
Uh,
got good stuff in there, yeah, definitely.
but
Uh,
I had actually put together a chart for all of the Roger Park people that are members of the Park DNA project. And I had worked with Susan on this, and Susan has a copy also. And she's actually been whittling down a little bit. She's found a couple people to test. And unfortunately, right now we're very early on. I'd like to see a lot more people from the Roger Park line test, and we can start. Both as Ken alluded to in the beginning, not only Big Y but autosomal. And although autosomal is limited in only taking you back conclusively about 5 generations, if you see a parallel line that matches up, you could say, the light bulb goes off, like they must share a common ancestor a little further back. So it is beneficial. And obviously, you've mentioned that you've had autosomal testing done. So, but anyway, we've already started the process, and it kind of stalled out a little bit, but maybe with a few more people tugging at the strings, we can, you know, get it going again.
Sounds good. And you brought up the cost of tests and upgrades. At our last trustee meeting, we formally approved the setting aside of some funds to subsidize DNA tests and DNA upgrades, because one of the big drawbacks for the big Y test is its expense. So if we can, at least whittle away some of that, make it a little more possible for people to do that, hopefully we'll begin to raise the level within the project. And what we're going to do is set aside $5,000 initially, and as that is depleted, then by that time, hopefully we'll be in a position financially to, just out of our member dues, set up a fund of at least, say, $3,000 a year to continue that process. So be looking for some news on that once we get our act together soon. But we're looking at something like $100 subsidy, which would for a upgrade from 111 to Big Y would substantially reduce that cost, and even off of a full, just brand new Big Y test out of the blue, brings it a little bit more into the realm of reality for people. I wish I could, you know, corner somebody from FTDNA, but they haven't had an admin conference this year. They said they were going to, and they haven't, because that's the biggest factor I think that is keeping us from really making progress on that is the expense. And it doesn't really seem like that big Y test is going to come down the way other tests did over time, the cost. So we're looking for a way to sort of do that on our own. So stay tuned, as I said. Kim, are you still with us?
I'm
Maybe
still
she's-
here.
Good. Well, yeah, Kim's father has a 111 test in the project, and she currently has a big Y pending. So we're waiting for those results to come in. She's in lineage key JP, and there are others in that line that could benefit from upgrading to the big Y, and we need to reach out to some of them. Again, that is in group 4, if I'm correct.
Yes.
My notes, yeah. And again, that's the Arthur Park line, which ultimately came from Northern Ireland. But there are a number of sort of very early 1700s fragment lines that these guys are around in Pennsylvania, but we can't quite connect them to the Arthur line, but they have to be. So again, the big Y can, if we get enough people to that level, can begin to hopefully identify some branches that we can sort of steer our research closer to.
Okay, the big Y results for group 4 that just came in this week were from a Michael Adolph Parks.
Oh yeah.
And we actually have a haplotype now for group 4. So when Kim's father's results come in, we'll see if he matches that haplotype and see
Yeah.
if we're on the road.
Well, and depending on how they match, that haplotype may change and come forward in time, even if they happen to share some private variants.
Right.
So that again could be very helpful. But there are a couple of other tests in there that we could certainly reach out and try to get upgraded. And in the meantime, again, Kim, if you haven't tried this full text search at Family Search, I think it might be worthwhile because you never know what's going to turn up. I don't know if you all can see the note from Sarah, but she says it's $239 US dollars to upgrade from 111 to big Y. So with our subsidy, that becomes certainly more affordable, and hopefully will encourage more people in the project to make that next step.
I'm just looking at the lineage. This will probably mean more for Kim, for Michael, and he goes back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations. William Parks, who came over from Donegal, Ireland, or I'm sorry, didn't come over from Donegal, Ireland. His sons did. One of them was Arthur Park, who the line was named after, and then his son Joseph, who I think they believe went down to Georgia or someplace. Kim's line only goes back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to a Hugh Park, which I think Kim, did you find him in Pennsylvania, I believe?
Yes, Hugh is in York County, but I also found his father was John Parks. I have the orphan court records that list Hugh as one of the orphans. And that goes back to John Parks' death, untimely death, 1785 in Fawn Township in York County.
So what we're trying to figure out is if Hugh was a son of Art or son of Art, or whether Hugh was one of the
John.
other.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. John was a son of Art, or whether he was a son of one of the other brothers of Art that Um, I think they didn't come over. One of them, I think, did come over with Art or in the same general area. But I think there was a couple other ones that stayed behind in Ireland. And of course, their offspring could have migrated separately. So, maybe this her father's big Y test might tip us off as to
Yeah.
whether we're looking at Art's line or, one of the brothers.
I,
Maybe.
I may be wrong, but for some reason I think there was also a branch of that family that was up in New England.
I think you're right.
But certainly York County is right there with Arthur Parks is in Chester County,
Mhm.
and then you've got Lancaster going over there, and then York. So it's there's almost certainly a connection there. It's just finding it.
Right. And I took the Arthur line and I tried to build it out. I thought at some point they're going to have to meet somewhere. That was my original thinking, but I'm not getting very far at the moment. There was also a John Parks in Warwick, in York County.
Mhm.
But that is not a direct lineage. So I still think they're connected somehow, but it's not direct.
Mm. Well, hopefully your dad's DNA results will give perhaps some clarity, but also seeing what's in those early records, if you haven't already, sort of mined that field, uh, something else might turn up. I wasn't aware that you had discovered the father of you, so that's certainly valuable information because that's putting you back certainly closer. And so I think if we could get together at some point and with Tad, whoever, and sort of have everything in front of us, which is difficult to do at a meeting like this, more general.
Right.
But let's try to set that up sometime.
Okay, and I sent all those documents in with my application, and I think the last I heard, Tad was still trying to get to it to update the website and go through those documents and put that one generation back.
Yeah, he just got his office put back together. I had a meeting with him the other day. He has an office down in the basement of his house with all of the Park Society records and everything. And they had some leaking problems or something years ago, and had to pull things and get them rearranged. And he just had the floor redone and shelves put back and that sort of thing. So that I think has slowed him down. And he's had a couple of little health issues lately. So give him a little break for a while on that.
Oh,
But
it's no problem, but I just wanted to let you know that is out there.
okay, and I'll see. I may have been copied on that, so I may have access to it. I'll take a look before we set up a meeting. Okay, sounds good. Let's see. After couldn't make it. Carol's not here. Ken, I think we talked about. You described some of your issues at the last meeting, and we've been in touch before. Again, I think we could benefit from a one-on-one because all of that information you have back there in Sligo is, and I started years ago to do a little bit of research over in Sligo, and I'm not sure that I have anything that you wouldn't have, but I'll pull that out and see what I can find. I think from what I remember, it seemed to me that there were at least 2 different park lines in County Sligo. And so we'll see if
Or
perhaps more,
Yeah.
but 2 is enough to just make confusing. So we'll set something up and again get into that and see. But again, I'm not sure because I haven't tried to do this with this fairly new full text search. What might be available over there in Sligo? So you might check that out.
Well, one of the problems that I have found, Roger Parks Sr. had a son, Roger Parks, and they both come up, but when I'm looking for hints on ancestry, I think that ancestry maybe confuses them. because I think the son is probably in the period of 1851 to 1858, and that's land holdings. And then there are earlier land holdings, in the first part of the 19th century, which would probably be the father. I do know from the information I got from Sligo Genealogy Center that the Roger Parks, I knew that there were 3 sisters that I mentioned, and just the 2 brothers. And also, it's fascinating to me when I hear some of these other folks talk. For some reason, there are a lot of, in the second generation born over here, there are a lot of Alexander Parks in our family line. And there was an Alexander Parks in an earlier census, and not a census, it was the flax growers list, I think. That is always fascinating to me, because there is that possibility there. But I've never been able to find, it's hard in Sligo because you only have the 2 censuses, and they're much too late. And I have had a lot more luck in finding Hunter information, which is Roger's son John, who is my line, and married Isabella Hunter. I've had a lot more help with the Hunter line and been more successful in that. And incidentally, the curious thing about that was that Isabella's brother John Hunter married a woman by the name of Catherine Park, and her ancestor was Robert Park. Her father was Robert Park. So we have Robert Park and Roger Park, and I don't know. It's very confusing at times.
Remind me, do you think they were English in origin?
I think they were. I think they were English in origin. Yes, I think they were Anglo-Irish. And I'm not even sure at what point they came over. I know that I don't think they're related to the Donnelly Sligo Park family. They came over in 1601. But I doubt very much that they're related to. I've never found a link to that.
Yeah. Funny because Alexander, I always think of as being a Scottish sort of given name, but who knows?
Well, the Hunter line, what makes it confusing is also the Hunter line has Alexander in it.
Okay.
And so I don't know if our Parks line got the Alexander from the Hunter line, or they got both.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things, the little bit of research I've been doing over in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, just downloading births, baptisms, and marriages and that sort of thing. I think 3 out of every 4 men were named Alexander. It's just amazing how common that name was. And the other curious thing is, in my line, which we know is Scots-Irish, we're from County Armagh, the name Samuel, the given name Samuel, is very prominent over in Armagh and in our lines here in the American South and up in Canada. There isn't a single Samuel in any of those Aberdeenshire records, not a single one. And that just amazes me. It's like, when did it come in then? Because it's there in Ireland and it's here in America, but it's and we know we have genetic links to Aberdeenshire, and yet you don't see it there. Just
the
amazing.
Alexander name is so popular. It goes back in time, Alexander the Great and whatnot. My line is the Alexander Park line from Antrim County, Ireland. Well, my name is Gary Alexander Parks. And you would think that my Alexander name came from those Scots, right? No,
No?
it's from my mother's side, who's Hungarian.
Okay.
My father was named Alexander. They called him Alex for short.
Uh,
Probably came from Hungary through Ukraine, Russia,
Yeah.
Mongolia.
uh,
And the
I-
confusing thing with the Irish and the Scots too, at certain periods of time, the name Alexander appears usually as Alistair. That Alistair is another name for
Variation.
Alexander.
Hmm. Well, Dennis, your line goes back. That's what we're looking at, right? Goes back to Scotland.
Yeah.
On Dumfries, Galloway, and possibly back to Aberdeenshire. We're waiting to see. So, and I can't remember. Are there Alexanders? And I think there are.
Yeah. Probably 2 out of the first 3 generation
Yeah.
that I know of in southern Indiana were an Alexander, and William was the other one, I think.
Making a note here. Yeah, it's just I can't wait for your big Y results to come in, or any of your results to come in. So
Yeah, I'm new to this enough to I'm not sure all
Well,
the details of it, but
yeah.
I'm learning.
yeah, well the results take a while, and the big Y results take, it seems like 3 years. I mean, it's ridiculous, and they keep saying we're apologizing for the delays and we're getting our act together and it's going to come back into the more reasonable time frame. But so far, it's 3 months or more for those results to show up. And then I've had a couple of cases, and I guess other people do too. You get to that time frame, the end of that time frame, and then you hear from them and say, "Oh, the test failed. We have to rerun it."
Oh
And
my.
it's just like, oh, please. But you know, those dead ancestors aren't going anywhere. So until we join them someday, we've got time, I guess. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yeah, that's right. Kim points out that's what happened to her dad's big Y test, is it had to be rerun. So we're still waiting. Anybody else have questions or comments here today?
Yeah, I do.
Sure.
I've used the family search in the past and just the general search, and I've not been impressed with it. Now, today you gave 2 options, so I'm kind of curious what the difference between the 2 options are.
Well, when you're just doing a regular search on family search, I'm not sure whether they're incorporating the AI into that, or if it's simply from indexing, because that's the way they did their microfilm collections for a long time. They relied on usually church members, volunteers, to index things, and so that search engine may rely more on that than the AI. I'm just guessing and talking out of my hat right now, but definitely try the full text search and see if you get any better results.
And you
And-
mentioned the AI is a beta test, right?
Yeah. And also, go to the research wiki and see if there's any resources there other than family search that maybe you haven't availed yourself of. Yeah.
So the one at the bottom, you would the second option that you gave would be the first one to try, and then try the wiki one.
Well, any order you want. I just the strength of the wiki is just that it covers all sorts of areas and all kinds of records, and they aren't necessarily The only thing you're going to get hits on in the full text search are things that are in Family Search's database. So the wiki will show you where a lot of other things are. It might be, Library of Virginia, or North Carolina Archives, or, just places that have information that they don't have. So definitely use them both. But in terms of not getting a lot of feedback or hits on Family Search, try that full text search and see if it works any better.
Okay, good. Thanks.
And let us know. Come back to the next meeting or two, and we'll see how this has worked out for everybody. Anybody else?
I just like to second your ideas here today of using the more old-fashioned tools of paper trail searching, because as fantastic as DNA is, it's really just a tool, and it has limitations like anything else. And I think, I'm finding more and more that the paper trail is still king or queen or whatever you want.
Oh, yeah. Kim, I don't know if you can see her comment, but she said, yeah, many local historical societies will sometimes for a nominal fee do research for you there. And sometimes they don't even charge. I know over here across the river in Wayne County, Pennsylvania, they will often do research among whatever they have for people out of town. And the people on the ground who are interested in their local county history know their stuff, and just like you have found, I'm sure, in the course of your research, the more you know about friends and neighbors and in-laws and other family names that are associated with it, you see something like that, something to you. And it wouldn't mean something to anybody just reading it on the face of it. And that's true when you're dealing with those people who are very familiar with, that local area's resources, because they know the families, So yeah, definitely avail yourself of, and even if they don't charge, send them some money, because I can guarantee they need it, Anybody else? Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And next month, I mentioned before everybody got here, I hope it's not too confusing that we keep flip-flopping month to month from Saturday to Sunday and from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's an effort we're trying to make because we're hoping to gain more members from overseas. And that's why on Sundays at 1, that makes that a more reasonable hour in the early evening for them to join us. But of course, that disadvantages people like Sarah on the West Coast and others in California, because then it gets too early. And so every other month, we're trying a Saturday and a little bit later, so that people on the West Coast, especially if it were a Sunday, we have some members out there who say, I can't get back from church in time for the meeting when it's that early. So we're split the baby, or whatever analogy you want, and every other month try to make it a little easier for people on the West Coast of the U.S. and then the next month people overseas to join us. And if we ever get members from Australia, I don't know what I'm going to do. So, we'll cross that bridge when we blow it up or whatever. So again, thanks. And everybody, we talked about, and even those we haven't spoken to specifically, or anybody watching the recording of this, if you want to set up a one-on-one meeting sometime, we'll see what we can do. Now that the weather's warm, Mother Nature calls me outside to build bridges and redo stone steps and things like that. But we'll find a time, and we'll pray for rainy days and schedule these meetings where we can really focus in on your particular brick wall. Okay? Well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you hopefully next month or the month after that.
Thank you, Ken.
Take care.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.